may now speak to any other organizers or panelists on the line. When you are ready to begin the presentation, press the
Okay.
Start Broadcast
Done.
button on the
So here is my
GoToWebinar control panel to allow all attendees to hear you. This system will notify you once you begin your
multiple
broadcast.
controller. We have already done it. Perfect. So we got something called as inner controller. Now, my inner controller is basically a controller inside a controller. Maybe I have got some requirement where I have something like this, where I want to define some properties out there. Okay. So I got something like name or company, and I want another controller which is part of it, which has the name. So the first controller will have the name as A, and I can always go ahead to the inner controller and change the name as B. So this has I have done. Now I can have inner controller. So the outer controller, inner controller, inner. The inner controller can always override the value from the outer. That's possible. But vice versa, it's not. Okay. So just a controller inside another. And for all the things, there's only one scope. There's only one scope. So just a variable. Nothing special about it. Okay. So let me just try creating another file. I would say this file is. I'll go to this place, new, save this. I call it as nav. I'm sorry, app6. I'll select the file type as HTML. Perfect. Save. So in your document, I'm gonna copy from here till end of HTML. Perfect. So just copy paste it. We're doing a lot of copy paste, guys. Just make sure. Since it's copy paste, no, for every program we'll give a pause of at least 1 minute. You just have a look at the code. Let me run through the code. What is it? So first and foremost, we're gonna say it as ng app, and I have a controller which is called as a first controller. You could call it as outer controller as of now, and I'll have an inner controller. Okay. So this is div, and I have a div. Okay. Now there are a couple of properties which I can obviously share it. For example, I have a first name which is defined in the outer controller, and I try using the outer controller first variable here. Maybe I want something like get full name in the inner controller. I can even pass some objects which we see in some time. I have an object. I want that object to go to inner controller. Yes, possible. So what we try doing is something like this. This statement as of now, you can just leave it, ignore it. We're gonna come back to that little later. But as of now, what has happened? I have the front controller name as front controller. I have a function. Now my function takes a scope parameter. I say controller is called. The first name is Naveen. I have a second controller. The second controller, the function is called. It's Srinivas. In second controller, I have full name. So if you look at this, in second controller, you have full name. Okay. So let me just save this and go back. Up 6. Perfect. So I should still be able to change it. I want to show that two-way data binding and so on. So this is coming from second controller. This comes from the first controller. You can even pass the objects. Okay. Have a look at that program. Let me know if you have any questions. Now by the time it should have taken like 10 minutes. Very quickly. Maybe some changes here and there you can try doing it. But at the level are made as much as just to understand the concept. Then the code should be, we should be able to understand it. like other complicated code. And moreover, debugging is also pretty straightforward, except for that we don't have a very good idea supply or that's from somebody called as brackets from Adobe. Brackets is a nice one. It's ID for job. Which one? No, brackets is free. Brackets is free. How is error control? So functionality wise, you can still achieve the same with two controllers. So maybe I have outer controller will take something from one server. Okay. And it displays it. If it is, I can have two controllers. Right. So if it is this controller, it overrides its behavior. If it is otherwise. So in such cases,
have to run from the server, from inside the server. That actually, but just to unable just to open it from the
It's written with this.
not
Is that working?
for me saying some contain some characters from outside the
Okay, guys, if you find that, because I was trying to do this on the Macintosh, this would be a small problem. So you look at this hyphen which is there, only that is causing a problem. You can just copy this and replace it with one hyphen because it's only a character set. The same thing Prajesh and Divakar had it. So I just said replace all. Try that. Maybe you might have to do it for all programs or however. It should take. Perfect. Right. Yeah. Alright. Okay. Right, guys, we'll move on to the next program. Any questions here? Any question? Come. Sagar, getting it? Okay. Yes, are we done? Right. So let's consider one more directive, which is called as ngif. Now, as the name says, it is if. So we should land up with the two options, either the true part or the false part. So ngif directive removes or recreates a portion of the DOM tree based on the expression. So what happens? Now, one more thing we somehow it slipped out of my mind, the way how this Angular is built. Now what happens when you build an Angular? The app, the modules, the dependencies or the directives, whatever you have got, it tries loading everything. It means it is trying to create a DOM. It creates a DOM. So, and we know that a DOM is always a heavy weighted object. So it creates an object. Now I have a request. Okay, I have ngif. I want this child to be shown or this child to be shown or this part of the job to be done. In such case, I can use something like ngif. Now it's pretty straightforward, and if you look at the syntax, it looks something like this. So I'll say span ngif, and did you observe that little closely when we look at the documentation? You say ngif, okay, and the function is ng hyphen if. Now, whenever there is a hyphen, that's why the problem is happening. Now, whenever we try creating a directive, we create something like this, and we use it this way. Okay, so I'm gonna talk about that little later. Now, my requirement is something like this. I have two files, two HTML files. Let's call it as first file, second file. I check first file should come and check second file should come. Okay, so we'll try creating the same scenario. Let's go back to the code. You on a Word document. Here I go. If condition, that's what you have it. You got some you no, something like this. You have this. Okay, you got two include also. Anyways, we'll finish off with if. So I'm gonna copy this and save it like with the HTML as an extension app7.html. HTML. That's application 7.html. So get some background color as cyan and so on. Okay. Here I change from 6 to 7. So you did not check, that's by default. I check, hey, you checked. You did not check. So that's basically a DOM tree which gets converted. Now here you would have seen a lot of website with some animation with delays and all. So what basically happens is that the only thing happens is the CSS. The CSS is given for the delays and so on. Which one? This one is it? Yeah, yeah. No, it's just a variable, not must show. ng model must show is a variable. I can say this as test or something like temp. I could use this temp and negation of it. It should still take it. I check, uncheck. Okay, just a variable. This is a function. ng model, you have a variable called as temp. Now in the ngif, I check what is the temp status. Temp checked, do this. Not checked, I am using this negation temp or negation must show, must not show, whatever. Just yes or no. It's a boolean. Okay.
There is no need to say temp check.
No. That's what we are doing, right? ngif true. Is temp true? Because this is a checkbox, I'll take it for granted. The checkbox will return me either yes or no. Okay. You just put it on the browser and check it once. Okay, I don't want something like a text to be done, but this time we'll go with a file. So I have two files like fragment1.html, fragment2.html, and so on. Now this is like include. So it is a very similar include if we try remembering that request dispatcher include which we did it, or JSP include which we did it. So here is your simple code. I would say, hey, input something, and I want to pass some value as well. Okay, so I would say nj init input variable is something, or you can take it from the input box from a model. I have a label data seen from external file, and that's a checkbox. You say get the file. So since it's a checkbox, I know few things. Checkbox either will give you yes or no. It can't give you any other value. So now I check ng include. If it is get file, then I'll say fragment1. If not, fragment2. Okay. So I'm gonna create a few files. First div, and do remember little cautiously. The moment you look at the code, there is only one HTML tag. You don't have multiple. The fragments will never have multiple. It will not have like HTML tags. It's not possible. And moreover, not multiple div tags. Because when we try talking on the SPA, the first rule is what? Somebody will get, and moreover, if you just go back to the discussion, what we would have got here, I'll just show the slide back. Maybe we can relate it now. Okay. So we are not doing more of MVC now. We are doing this job now. This program is this. Oh, the view is this place. Who is the presenter? Either of this. Okay. And you have a model. The model, of course, it's our scope. We are following this model now. That is MVP. It's not MVC because we have not written any controller. Look at this. There is no controller as of now. Okay. Now, if you ask me, hey Naveen, can I get this value from some other vendor? Yes, that's possible. If they give a better solution, we can always have it. Okay. Anyways, let me go ahead and try creating a file which is called as fragment1.html. I'll copy this code. Right click, copy in Notepad. I'll say new, paste it. I'll save this file as with the .html as an extension. I'll copy this .html. Perfect. Okay, that's your first file which I've created here. So it comes from the parent input var. Of course, you need not use this parent. It is still refer, but certain just to be on safer side, I tried using. So I'll create another file. I'll paste the same thing. The file name is called as fragment2.html. Perfect. .html. I'll select this file type to be as .html. Save. So typically this div is where you want to put the values all about. So you can even pass a scope object or whatever. Okay. So then is our main. I'll copy this. I'll create a new file. Paste. I'll go to file, save. So file name, I've just copied it from here because it's easier when we look into the documentation as well. .html. Perfect. Save. So we have three files: fragment 1, 2, 3. Okay. Is getting it? Hello? Hi. Perfect. Let's go back to the browser where I could find this include example. Perfect. So this is from second file because it is not checked. I could go ahead and put the name as well. Lenovo. In fact, this is being shown from second file. So I'll check. That's from the first file. And if you see this, there's no, the glitching here. It looks like you're working in the same file. Now, this is good and bad thing about AngularJS. It loads everything. The user experience, once the page loads, they'll have very good user experience. You'll never feel that you're working with the two files. However, the file be, now you could make that. I don't know. Let me also try. If I could just. I'll just copy this and paste it. So you'll not feel that two files are being loaded or whatever, because the first time it loads, it has to create a DOM. Anyways, just check if that works. Maybe syntactically here and there. This I believe is not a very big. The ternary operator what we have in C, Java. So question mark, the true condition of false condition. Separate it with the colon. and you find the documentation. I have most, the slide and the examples have all taken from the actual official website. So here and there I've just tweaked it. Let us also go there. I'll show you that. The best tutorial is this. You have a right example what you want. So I would say ng include. You just you find this page, you just type, you'll get everything, and they have an example as well. So you have a very decent amount of explanation, and unload all these things. There is an example associated. You have this. So example, there's a Dave example controller and all these things. I want to load it from second template, it loads. If we want to load it from the first template, it loads. Perfect. A similar one which I have done. This is what I was trying to talk about. If you want to have the sliding or some slow moving thing, it's only a CSS part. There's nothing fancy about it. It has nothing to do with your Angular. Okay. Who's getting it? We'll move further. Okay. So let's have a look at next example. Oh yes, I somehow forgot. I just wanted to show one more. Now we had this question: how good is security and all? So I would show one security how Gmail login authentication would happen. So that's called as mouse over. This is what these people are trying to. They are all recorded in the client level. Now this is ng mouse over. That's an directive. They use some counter, and this can even invoke some function. You can write your own function, and initially you'll set some value, blah blah blah, whatever it is. So increment the mouse pointer over it and count. Now I just take the mouse pointer and keep rotating it. Look at this. It keeps. Now this happened to be my value to send it to the server. So if you look at gmail.com, when you move the mouse pointer, it means that is a security authentication which you're doing without our knowledge. So if you just move, nobody can trap that. Even you cannot do it the second time, right? So that way they do similar kind of thing. So you just keep moving it and so on. The mouse. So now my shipper text is 33. This 33, if it goes to server, and it's all done. And this 33 can be some algorithm which I can create in a function. You would say this is better than security. Yes, to understand, it's a pretty nice concept. So you have various functions: ng press, ng down, key up, min length, mac length, list, and all. Maybe a lot of functions are. You name it, there is an example for it. So let's go back to our discussion. Okay, now we've been talking so much about the Angular. Now, one of the very important concepts of AngularJS is called as dependency injection. Okay, my Angular dependency injection goes something like this. Let me just write a small piece of code. Of course, it is there. I would write something like that: Angular dot module. So most of the code, whatever we have done it, it's pretty simple. Most of the code which we see it in the working environment, you will see like this only. Module. Now, any point of time, you can have only one module. Okay. Now this module happened to be your ng app. Okay. I will say something like my module. Now this my module, for example, if this module needs some internationalization, or it needs some routing, or it does not have any dependency, you just have to leave this. The moment you say the square bracket, it is the number of dependencies or the dependencies for this module. If you don't have anything, you just leave it as it is. It's a function. That's it. Okay. Now this dependency can come something like which we're gonna see it route, or it is also possible. For example, this is one of the dependencies we have. Let's assume this is one of routes which you got. Okay. Now, over a period of time, what people do is they keep developing the modules, their own module. This is done by team A, team B, team 3, and team 4. They're doing their own utility things. Now, team 4 comes, hey, look at this. I want the module from 2 and 3. Good. You take. Perfect. Done. So whatever the modules people have developed it, you will also have it. So it means what basically we bind is, we bind certain factory objects, certain service objects, certain business objects. We pass it through a scope object. Now this person who is called as my module may have associated with its own controller, right? That controller will show you the things. Is that clear enough? I'm developing a module this time, and so far what we have done is also a module, but that's called as anonymous. We did not have any name. Imagine that I want 5 controllers. Each of the controller will have a name that has a dependency, and that should be molded in a module. Likewise, I want 5 modules, right? So I'll have 5 modules. The 6th module is the one who will pick the 5 modules. So in such cases, this is how we can achieve. The second parameter is always the passing parameter. Look at this. Let me just run through that. This line. Look at this. So what is my app? My app happened to be the my app. That's a module which you develop. Not every module in the world which you develop is to be shown to the user. Okay, so my program looks very simple. And also look at this. We've been trying to use something like dot. So I want a JSON object. When you get a JSON object, that object will have first name, last name, middle name, all this things, blah blah. I want to pick it. I don't want to pass it 3 objects. I'll give you 1 object. Now the scope is at a very big level. Scope has an instance of person. The person has all the details of it. Now this can also become an object. I can put it on and extract some other details. That's a different story, right? But just to prove that that's possible. Okay. Now just at the highest level, you can have modules without name. You can have modules with. When you have the modules with, you will have the modules with name. You don't have, nobody's gonna write without modules. So you will have application development with modules. That module can also have a dependency. And every module, not every module, there are few modules which may require some dependency of the Angular modules. Okay. So here I'll have a simple example and so on. Anyways, I'm gonna copy this code. I will select this right from here till here. I'll right click, copy. So there's something called as value as well. We're gonna come back to this in our code. I create new, I'll paste. Let's go very slow, right? Because we are doing a lot of copy paste. Just on a go, we did so many things. We just in 10-15 minutes we tried finishing like 3 programs. Right? So I'll take this example. I'll copy this name. You can save this. I'll go to file, save. That's my file name .html. I'll save it with .html as an extension. Perfect. So it says save. Okay. So let's run through this. So my app, when you say my app, there should be a module. Now, how do you declare a module? You will write angular.module. Angular.module. It is possible the entire module can be kept in a variable. Yes, that's possible. I can use that variable elsewhere. Okay, that's why, because it's just a DOM object. It's nothing fancy about it. Now, I would say, hey, ng app, that's my app. Now that's why we can also have this app at the div level or body level and so on. Now, typically for a display, there will be one app to be displayed. We keep it on the body level. That's a good practice. Okay. Plus, now I have ng controller. Oh, the moment you have a ng controller, it means some value to be passed. It looks for, is there somebody called as ng controller? Okay. Under what? My app. I should look for my app. Oh yes, I have it. Now it needs a controller called a simple controller. Good enough. But now simple controller takes scope object. That's what we have seen it. It's not only the scope object which this function can take. It can take any number of parameters. It can take values, factories, services, and so on. Okay. Now we are constructing a person object. If you see this part which is highlighted from line number 25 to 35, I would say Angular module dot value, the name of the, it's like a key. Now I say for this person I will set all these values. I set all these values and it will be flown to the controller. And do remember, controller is like a service function for us. It will be invoked every time when we make a call. Okay, it's not like our init. Is that okay? Is getting it? Look at that, stare at that. That's required now.
By every time it makes a call, every time.
Whenever you refresh.
Or,
Yes.
so it wouldn't be a whole page refresh.
It should not be. It should be only this part of it. Okay. Now I have a controller. My controller has got a variable, the parameter called as person. I'll put it on person instance. So far this person was not the scope object. Now I'll make it as a scope object. This scope object, I render it. You could show something like MVC here. A typical MVC is shown here. You have model, view, control. Okay. Let me just put it on the browser and check. I'll save this. That's called as module ex1. I'll go back. That's what my program is. Perfect. So I can still change it. And look at this. Whenever I make a change, it is invoking it. You also have a look at the console. It keeps invoking it. So I just refresh. I say in simple controller, which is called, the first name is Kanchan. I'll say Yan. The first name happens to be, so which is coming from here. Okay. The values are changed. So that's where your two-way data binding is happening. Okay. I'll say that's where you have. So every time it is invoked, the DOM is getting manipulated. The DOM is actually being changed. Maybe here and there you can tweak a little bit and do it on your system. But we are going in very super fast way. Right click, inspect element. Maybe tomorrow, today if you get some time, we can put this on a subline. A lot of auto suggestion will come. And there are some free plugins also for AngularJS. Or maybe like 15 days or 1 month you have it. Yeah, a subline. If time passes, uninstall, install it again. Now, until you don't use it for development, it's a waste. Subline. You have it. There's a plugin. I'll show you one. Not much. It's not like our Eclipse. It's nothing like so beautiful as Eclipse. Is getting it? Is done? Avinash done? This will move further. Okay. Okay. So here we have somebody called as factories or factory. That's why. Now again, the name factory is the same old design pattern which we've been talking about. So why we use factory is like little heavy loaded, or you want to do something like one-time job, you can use with factory. So the flow will happen with module to factory till the controller. So ultimately, the controller will be the one who will have the last loading. And again, this file which we are trying to write, it can be kept in the same file. You can write the module in one place, controller in another place, and factories in another place. That's always possible. There's no problem. Now Angular will look into the rendering of it, and it will do it by itself. We are not bothered about it. Now factory is like one object which you want to give it to the controller, and which when we try basically declaring a factory, it looks like this: module dot factory, the factory name. I can have multiple factories, and factory is basically a function. So you can load anything what you want inside a function. So this function will look something like this. You stuff your stuff. It's a callback function. Okay? Perfect. Now when declaring a factory name as an injectable argument, okay, this is basically injectable argument. It does not do anything by itself. So this injection will do it for the controller. Argument, you will be provided with a value that is returned by invoking the function reference passed to the module factory. Now here I use something like a reference. One important aspect of reference is the first time it is constructed, every controller which you have, any controller who's gonna use, they will always use a reference object. Okay, the same object. There's only one object construction. You can use only the reference. You cannot hold the ownership of it. It makes sense, right? So when you have somebody called as a factory object, and if I've got about 50 controllers, the controllers can always use this factory, but cannot take the ownership of it. If you take ownership, you can do whatever you want, but you will have only the reference. You will refer it, make the changes, go or invoke the changes, and that's where the factory comes. Okay, it's getting perfect. So now let's have a look at the code. I'll go back here. I'm just trying to play some controllers with hi and bye. I say this ng app as my app, and there are a couple of controllers which we're gonna use. One is called as hi controller, one is called as bye controller. So I have hi controller and bye controller. Now my concern is I want the value for this hi and bye to come from the factory. Okay, so if I just scroll a little bit down, I would say, hey, I have a module, and the module name is called as my app, and this is the factory name. I would say it's basically a function. This function will take the text. So who will pass the text? It's all passed by the controller, because controller says, hey, look at this factory, I have this job, do this and give it to me. That doesn't mean that I'll hold the ownership of it. Now I say this function will return. What does it return? It returns two functions. One is called as say hello and say bye. Each function will take the text parameter and do some business logic. Now my controller it says I have got a scope. That's what defaultly I get it for rendering. Plus I want the test factory also. What is my test factory? Test factory is basically a factory object. Okay. Now I'll say console.log blah 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 and test factory dot say hello of the name. So what it does is it goes there, does the job, and in say hi factory it puts the name. So in my by factory it puts the okay. Is getting it? Yes, no, or better was typing than this sleepy faces. I do understand because by the I am sure that if we had typed till the end of the day, I would have not even come to this program. I would have not come to this program also. That would have never been possible. Even Sublime Editor, WebStorm, brackets and all, it's only there. Good. You want a light break of 3 minutes, 5 minutes, you can take any time. Quickly wash your face and come back. Tim always goes outside and gets a yes, I know. There's not much of typing here, right? Maybe 2 minutes you want, take it, I don't mind. But when I say 2 to 5 minutes, it is 5 minutes, guys. You're gonna come back, you know. The ultimate is we'll finish off things.